The exhaustion felt after years of calculated movement is rarely a product of the world's resistance, but rather the friction of a mind operating against its own center of gravity. Most believe that the accumulation of wealth is a linear accumulation of hours and sweat, yet they ignore the silent architecture that dictates whether that effort sticks or slides away like water on glass. It is a quiet, mathematical cruelty. The harder one pursues from a position of lack, the more the void expands to accommodate that pursuit. Reality does not respond to what is desired, but to the precise internal coordinate currently occupied, indifferent to how much intelligence or discipline is applied to the surface. There is a persistent, unsettling sensation that something has always been slightly out of alignment, a ghost in the machinery of your progress. This is not a failure strategy, but a manifestation of an internal discrepancy that distorts the response of the external world. When the internal position is one of chasing, the universe is forced to remain the thing being chased, maintaining a distance that no amount of physical speed can bridge. You have been functioning as a shadow trying to outrun its source, unaware that the shadow's length is entirely determined by the angle of the light, not the frequency of the steps. The world functions as a perfect, impartial echo of a central frequency that most people never learn to still. This invisible coherence governs the flow of capital with the same cold precision that gravity governs the orbits of the planets. It does not require permission, belief, or effort to exert its influence. Success and stagnation are not rewards or punishments, but merely the automatic feedback of a mental state that has achieved its own density. To remain in the current state of struggle is to pay a continuous, invisible tax to a law that is being ignored, ensuring that every gain is met with equal and opposite delay. True shifts occur only when the internal center of gravity is relocated, turning the frantic energy of pursuit into the silent force of a destination already reached. This is a law of the inverted pursuit, where the external world ceases to be a barrier and begins to function as a mirror, reflecting the density of an internal realization that no longer requires proof. When the internal noise of wanting is replaced by the singular weight of being, the environment has no choice but to reconfigure itself around this new axis. The delay you have experienced was never a lack of time, but the time required for reality to finish mirroring a fragmented internal state. To move forward requires a recognition that you have not lost years, but have simply been witnessing the absolute fidelity of a law that cannot be bypassed. The restoration of internal coherence begins in the absolute silence where the ego stops bargaining and the identity assumes its final position. This single, silent articulation of internal truth acts as a collapse of all previous resistance, aligning the gears of the economy with the gears of the mind. To understand this is to stand at a threshold where the old mechanics of effort are rendered obsolete, leaving only the inevitable arrival of what has already been claimed within. The observation of human movement reveals a profound and silent contradiction that few have the courage to name, yet everyone feels in the marrow of their bones. There exists a specific class of exhaustion that does not stem from the volume of work performed, but from the terrifying realization that immense effort is producing zero displacement. You have seen them, or perhaps you are navigating that very corridor. Individuals who possess superior intelligence, unwavering discipline, and an exhaustive list of credentials, yet they remain tethered to a financial reality that feels like a recurring dream of running through waist-deep water. They study the markets, they refine their skills, and they sacrifice the present for a hypothetical future, only to find that the horizon of true prosperity retreats at exactly the same speed they approach it. This is not a failure of the world to recognize talent, nor is it a consequence of bad timing, but the first hint that they are playing a game whose primary rules are not found in any textbook or strategic manual. The persistent friction encountered in the pursuit of wealth is rarely a matter of external resistance. It is a physical manifestation of an internal infrastructure that is fundamentally misaligned with the result it claims to seek. Most people operate under the delusion that action is the primary currency of the universe, believing that if they only push harder, stay awake longer, or think more intensely, the reality of their bank balance will eventually capitulate to their will. However, reality is not a fortress to be stormed, but a fluid system that organizes itself around the density of the observer's internal state. When an internal state is one of frantic searching, the external response is a corresponding state of perpetual elusiveness, because the very act of searching confirms the absence of the thing sought. The harder the push, the more the field pushes back, not out of malice, out of a perfect mathematical symmetry that reflects the individual's own deep-seated assumption of lack. To look closely at the architecture of one's days is to see a series of actions that are constantly being canceled out by a silent, underlying frequency of doubt and desperation. One might speak the language of abundance and attend meetings with an air of confidence, but beneath the surface, the mind is broadcasting a different command, a command rooted in the fear of falling behind or the conviction that money is something that must be wrestled from the hands of an unwilling world. This internal noise creates a form of cognitive interference that distorts every external opportunity, turning potential breakthroughs into mere distractions or short-lived gains that inevitably leak away. It is as if the individual is trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of shifting sand. No matter how grand the design or how expensive materials, the structure is doomed by the very ground upon which it sits. You are witnessing the heavy cost of maintaining a public identity of success, while harboring a private identity of insufficiency. The tragedy of the modern worker is the belief that the how of making money is more important than the who, that is, making it. We are taught to focus on the mechanics, the sales funnels, the investment strategies, the networking protocols, while ignoring the silent architect who directs these tools from the shadows of the subconscious. If the architect is convinced that survival is the goal, every action will be filtered to the lens of survival, ensuring that no matter how much money passes to the hands, the feeling of safety remains forever out of reach. This creates a loop of just enough, where the universe provides exactly what is required to maintain the current state of tension, but never enough to transcend it. The question is not why the money isn't coming, but what internal command is being followed with such absolute precision that it keeps the money exactly where it is, outside of your immediate experience. Eventually, the realization must surface that the problem has never been a lack of merit or a deficiency in the work ethic. You have worked hard enough to have succeeded 10 times over. Yet here you are, contemplating the same limitations that defined your reality 5 years ago. This stagnation is actually a testament to the power of your internal alignment. You are currently a master at producing the exact result you are experiencing. The system is working perfectly, according to the blueprints you have unconsciously provided. To recognize this is to step onto a cold, hard-floor truth. You've been the one holding the door shut from the inside, convinced that you were trying to pull it open. The effort was real, the pain was real, but the direction was fundamentally inverted, creating a cycle of self-imposed resistance that no amount of external labor could ever hope to overcome. The field in which you operate is not a void to be filled with your efforts, but a highly sensitive medium that responds to the gravity of your internal position. Imagine a massive weight placed on a taut fabric. The fabric bends not because it wants to, but because the presence of the weight makes any other configuration impossible. Your financial reality is that fabric, and your dominant internal state is the weight. If your internal weight is defined by the memory of past failures, the anxiety of future bills, and the constant observation of what is missing, the fabric of your life will naturally curve into a pit of scarcity. Most people spend their lives trying to smooth out the wrinkles in the fabric with their hands, never realizing that the only way to change the shape of the surface is to change the weight that is pressing down upon it from the center. When you attempt to force a financial result through sheer willpower, you are essentially trying to defy the laws of mental gravity. You might manage to lift a heavy sum of money into your life for a brief moment, but because your internal center of gravity remains unchanged, the weight of your old identity will eventually pull that money back down or dissipate it through unforeseen expenses and poor decisions. This is why many who win a lottery or receive sudden windfalls find themselves back at their original level of wealth within a few years. Their external circumstances change, but their internal set point remain anchored in a different reality. The world eventually settles back into the shape of the mind that inhabits it. To ignore this is to commit oneself to a life of endless, exhausting lifting, rather than learning the art of shifting the center of gravity itself. The pursuit of wealth often becomes a form of persecution, where the individual is unintentionally chasing away the very thing they desire. In the language of the silent laws, to pursue something is to announce to the universe that it is currently over there and not here. This announcement is a command, and the universe, being an impartial mirror, must obey. It keeps the object of your desire over there, always just beyond your fingertips, always requiring one more course, one more connection, one more year of grind. The chase itself becomes the identity, and the more you identify as a hunter of success, the more success must play the role of the prey that escapes. You are trapped in a role of your own making, playing a game where winning would mean the end of the game you have spent your whole life learning to play. Consider the possibility that the silence you fear is actually the only place where the realignment can occur. In the noise of your daily struggle, you are constantly reaffirming the old contract of lack and effort. Every complaint about the economy, every moment of envy toward a peer, and every anxious look at your bank account is a signature on a renewal of your current state. These are the silent articulations that run the engine of your life. You are already saying things in silence every day, but they are things that reinforce your stagnation. You are telling yourself, with the weight of your entire being, that you are someone who must work hard to survive, and the world is simply agreeing with you. It is a dialogue that has been going on for decades, a steady stream of internal commands that leave no room for a different reality to take root. This realization brings a specific kind of discomfort, a sense of being the sole architect of a prison you thought was built by others. It is much easier to blame the government, the industry, or the lack of opportunity than it is to accept that your own internal coherence is what has organized these external factors into a wall. Yet, within this discomfort lies the only real path to sovereignty. If the wall is a product of your own internal gravity, then you are the only one who can change the field. The friction you feel is not a sign that you should push harder, but a signal that you're trying to move in a direction that your current internal state does not support. The game is not being played against the world. It is being played against the inertia of your own unrecognized assumptions. The invisible order that governs your financial life is as precise as the laws of thermodynamics. It does not care about your intentions, your hopes, or whether you're a good person by societal standards. It only cares about the consistency of the signal you are projecting from your deepest level of identity. This is why you see individuals who seem to possess no special talent or ethics, yet attract immense wealth with ease. They have, for reasons of their own, achieved an internal state that is simply coherent with the presence of money. They do not chase it because, in their internal geometry, the money is already there, a natural and inevitable part of their environment. They have bypassed the need for effort because they have mastered the art of being the destination rather than the traveler. Most people live in a state of permanent internal divorce. They want one thing with their conscious minds, but their internal state is committed to something entirely different. They want wealth, but they are internally committed to the safety of the known, even if the known is a state of struggle. They want freedom, but they are internally committed to the validation that comes from being a hard worker who suffers for their gains. This lack of coherence creates a chaotic output in the world, a series of starts and stops, of small wins followed by large setbacks. It is a house divided against itself, and such a house cannot stand the winds of a volatile economy. You are currently paying the price for this internal division, wasting energy trying to reconcile two opposing versions of yourself. The response to reality is always automatic and never personal. It is an echo, and an echo does not negotiate. It simply repeats the sound that was made. If you shout scarcity into a canyon, the canyon does not give you abundance just because you've been shouting for a long time. It gives you scarcity back every single time with perfect fidelity. To change the echo, you must change the initial sound, but the sound is not made with your lips. It is made with the very core of your position in the world. This is the silent articulation that the theme refers to. It is a shift in the fundamental frequency of your being that changes the input before the echo is even formed. Most are so busy listening to the echo and complaining about its volume that they never think to change the sound they are making in the silence of their own minds. You have been operating under the illusion that there is a gatekeeper who must be convinced to let you through to the other side of prosperity. You look for the secret handshake, the right mentor, or the perfect timing, hoping that someone or something will finally give you the okay to succeed. But the gatekeeper is a myth. There is only a mirror. The door you see is not locked. It is simply waiting for you to stop pushing against it, so it can swing open on its own. The effort you expend in trying to get money is the very thing that keeps the door closed, as it proves you still believe you're on the outside. Every moment you spend in the state of not having is a moment you are actively constructing the very barrier you claim to hate. The cost of this misunderstanding is not just financial. It is a slow erosion of the soul that comes from living a life that feels like an endless series of unrewarded tasks. You begin to believe that life is a struggle, that the world is harsh, and that only a lucky few get to experience true ease. These beliefs then become part of your internal weight, deepening the pit in the fabric of your life and making the struggle even more real. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy of the most sophisticated kind. You are not failing at life. You are succeeding at manifesting a life of struggle, and you are doing it with remarkable consistency. The question is whether you are ready to acknowledge that your current reality is not an accident, but a masterpiece of internal misalignment. The concept of gravity applies to the mind just as it does to matter. A mind that is saturated with the weight of its current limitations creates a gravitational pull that attracts more of the same. Every thought about debt, every feeling of I can't afford that, and every moment of stress about the future adds to this mental mass. Eventually, this mass becomes so great that it warps the time and space around you, ensuring that no matter where you go or what you do, you're always pulled back into the same orbit of lack. You are trapped in a low Earth orbit of your own making, burning through immense amounts of fuel just to keep from crashing, but never having enough to reach the escape velocity required to enter a different state of being. To enter the realm of true economic flow, one must understand the law of the inverted pursuit. In this state, you no longer run toward the money. Instead, you occupy the internal position that makes the money run toward you. This is not a poetic metaphor, but a description of how the field reconfigures itself when the internal friction is removed. When you stop being a seeker and start being a repository, the environment must adjust to fill the vacancy you have created. It is the same principle that causes air to rush into a vacuum. By creating an internal space that is already coherent with wealth, you create a pressure differential in the world that forces the money to move in your direction. The movement is automatic, silent, and requires no more effort than water flowing downhill. The difficulty lies in the fact that the mind is addicted to the struggle. It finds meaning in the grind and identity in the hustle. To suggest that money can come through a silent internal realignment is an insult to the ego, which wants to take credit for every cent earned through its own cleverness and sweat. The ego would rather be a successful martyr than a silent beneficiary of a natural law. This is why you find yourself resisting the very idea of ease, looking for the catch, and insisting that it can't be that simple. You are more committed to your identity as a striver than you are to the result of being wealthy. This internal loyalty to the struggle is the final and most powerful anchor keeping you in your current position. You're standing at a threshold where the old maps no longer work. You follow them to the letter, and they have led you to this place of sophisticated stagnation. The next step is not a step forward, but a step inward, into the silence where the true commands are issued. You must be willing to let go of the pride you take in your effort and the comfort you find in your complaints. You must be willing to see your financial situation not as a problem to be solved, but as a symptom of a deeper incoherence. The world is waiting for you to finish your internal argument, so it can finally give you what you've been asking for with your lips, but denying with your heart. The realization that is beginning to dawn on you is both terrifying and liberating. It is terrifying because it means you are responsible for everything you have experienced, but it is liberating because it means the power to change it has never been in anyone else's hands. You do not need to wait for the economy to change, for the boss to give you a raise, or for the right investment to appear. You only need to achieve a state of internal density that makes the presence of wealth more real than its absence. This is not about visualization or positive thinking. It is about the cold, calculated realignment of your fundamental identity. You are preparing to say something in the silence of your being that will rewrite the code of your reality, and for the first time, the world will have no choice but to listen. There is a specific vibration to the word mind that has nothing to do with greed and everything to do with certainty. Most people say, I want, which is a statement of distance. A few say, I will have, which is a statement of time. But the law only responds to the internal state of it is. When you say something in silence from a position of absolute internal coherence, you are not making a request. You are stating a fact. The world of form must eventually collapse into the shape of that fact. The delay you experience is simply the time it takes for the physical world to catch up to the mental shift that has already occurred. If you can maintain the silence and the certainty, the arrival is not just likely, it is inevitable. You have spent your life playing the wrong game, thinking that the scoreboard was the cause of the play rather than the result. You've been staring at the numbers. Try and make them change through sheer force of gaze, while the player inside you is still playing the old, losing strategy. The shift you are about to undergo is the movement from the observer of the result to the author of the cause. This is a transition from the pursuit of happiness to the happiness of pursuit, where the internal state is so full and so dense that the external world begins to leak money and opportunity as a natural byproduct of your presence. You are no longer asking for a seat at the table. You are realizing that the table is a projection of your own internal architecture. As you sit in this space of recognition, notice the subtle ways your mind tries to return to the old patterns of planning and worry. These are the ghosts of your former alignment, trying to reassert their dominance over your field. They are harmless unless you give them the fuel of your attention. The new alignment requires a different kind of discipline, not the discipline of action, but the discipline of internal stillness. It is the ability to remain at your new center of gravity even when the external world has not yet reflected the change. This is a period of incubation, where the silent command is taking root in the deep soil of the subconscious, preparing to burst forth as a new financial reality. The final perception that must take hold is that you are not earning your way into a new life, but rather unlearning the habits that kept you out of it. You are stripping away the layers of friction, the stories of struggle, and the addiction to effort. What remains is a clean, sharp, and undeniable internal position that the world cannot ignore. The money coming to you is merely the physical evidence that you have finally stopped arguing with the laws of your own mind. You are moving into a state of unconscious competence in the realm of wealth, where the right actions occur to you naturally, the right people find you without effort, and the resources you need appear just as the need arises. You are now at the edge of the silence. The words you have read have not taught you anything new. They have simply rearranged what you already knew into a configuration that allows for a different result. The tension you feel is the old you resisting its own dissolution. Do not fight it. Let the old identity of the striver fall away, and let the new identity of the receiver take its place. The door is already open, and the field is already shifting. The only thing left is to speak the truth in the silence of your own being, and watch as the physical world begins a long-awaited process of aligning itself with your new command. The path is now clear, yet it remains invisible to those who are still looking for a physical map. You have understood that the saying is not a vocalization, but a total occupancy of a new internal coordinate. This is a point of no return, where the old logic of work equals money is replaced by the higher logic of state equals reality. You are no longer waiting for a sign. You have become the signal. The silence is no longer an empty space, but a pressurized chamber of potential, ready to manifest the wealth that has always been yours by right of alignment. The world is silent, waiting for your next move, the one that happens without moving a single muscle. The air in the room feels different when the noise of pursuit finally dies down. You are beginning to understand that the frantic energy you once called ambition was actually the sound of your own resistance, a static that blurred the frequency of your true potential. To stop chasing is not to give up, but to finally occupy the space you were trying to reach, allowing the field to settle around you like dust after a long, unnecessary storm. The relief you feel now is the sudden absence of the weight you carried while trying to force a world that only responds to the weight of stillness. You have lived your entire life under the jurisdiction of a law that never needed your consent to govern your outcomes. Every moment of scarcity was a perfect reflection of an internal coordinate, a precise map of where you believed you were allowed to stand in the hierarchy of existence. Returning to the old logic of struggle will now feel like wearing a garment that has become several sizes too small. The friction will be constant, a persistent physical reminder that the old identity no longer fits the frame of your current awareness. The world has stopped being a wall and has begun to function as a gateway. True wealth is not a trophy to be won through combat, but the inevitable byproduct of a mind that has achieved its own center of gravity. There's a profound and silent difference between the emptiness of needing and the density of having. A threshold where the mirror of reality stops showing you what you lack and begins reflecting the weight of what you are. You are no longer looking at the horizon for a sign of arrival, because you have realized that the horizon is merely the limit of your own internal vision, and that limit has just been dissolved. The silence you now inhabit is a pressurized chamber where the new commands of your life are being forged without the interference of doubt. It is a space where the frantic how of the world becomes irrelevant, replaced by the absolute and quiet certainty of the is. As the days unfold, you will notice the environment rearranging itself with a quiet, almost unsettling efficiency, proving that the struggle you once wore as a badge of honor was always optional. The world is finally catching up to the shift you have already made in the deepest layers of your being. This recognition marks the beginning of a different kind of movement, one that does not require the exhaustion of the spirit to produce the abundance of the hand. If you feel the pull toward a deeper architecture of this truth, it is because your internal coherence is already seeking its next level of expansion. To explore the further reaches of the silent law is simply to acknowledge the path your own mind has already begun to pave for the ruins of your former limitations. The transition is complete. The rest is merely the arrival of the echoes that have been traveling toward you since the moment you chose to be still. The mirror has no choice but to follow the face.